10-8, equations of circles. So in any math class, whenever you graph things, they make a certain shape, I guess you could say. So you guys are pretty used to probably graphing lines and parabolas. That's probably the only things you've graphed on a consistent basis before geometry. So today we're going to graph a circle. So just like when you had a line, you did like y equals mx plus b or something like that, right? You had some more choices in that, but typically you did slope-intercept form. We have a general equation. So our general equation for a circle is x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals r squared, where h comma k is the center of the circle and r is the radius. Okay? Just kind of like y equals mx plus b. That's what it is. So we're going to use it. Write the equation of each circle. So when you do that, if you go back to Algebra 1 again for a moment, like when we did y equals, I don't know, 1/2 x plus 2, bless you. When we were done, we had an x and a y in the problem. We had replaced the m and the b with numbers. Same concept here. When we're done, everything but x and y is going to be a number. This will be a number, this will be a number, and this will be a number. But x and y will be x and y at the end. Okay? So what I do until you have something memorized is I typically write down the equation every time, and then I fill in what I know. So I'm going to go ahead and write down the x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Okay? So again, if you go back to the top of your paper, h comma k is the center. So this is h, this is k. Does that make sense? All right. And then the radius is what here? 8. The diameter is 16, so the radius was 8. Does everybody understand? All right. We're just going to fill in what we know. If this says x minus, what was h? Negative 2 squared plus y minus, what's k? 0 squared equals r squared. All I've done is substitute. Is everybody okay with that? All right. Two negatives make a positive. X plus 2 squared plus y minus 0 is just y. So I'm going to go ahead and say y squared equals, what's 8 squared? 64. That's your final I'm done answer. Yep. So they didn't ask us to solve, they didn't ask us to FOIL, nothing like that. The equation of a circle always looks like this. You want it to stay like that. Is that okay? Okay. We could have skipped, technically, we didn't have to write this down. We didn't have to write this down. We could have gone straight here. Again, whenever you do something until you're pretty confident, I probably do everything I do. But eventually, if you look at this, this is x minus h, and this is negative 2. What are you always going to take? What I was looking for is the opposite. You're right, but that's not what I was looking for. Okay, so you can do this if you want, but just know that it's always going to be the opposite of this sign. Obviously, there's not really an opposite of a 0, but if it says negative 2, you put a positive 2. Does that make sense? So you can do the two negatives make a positive on your own if you want to, or you can make yourself a note, take the opposite. So if you want to write that down, you can, if that's helpful. If not, don't. Okay. All right, center. Again, this is my h, this is my k. But it passes through 0, 6. So they didn't give me radius, they didn't give me diameter. I'm going to have to figure it out on my own, okay? So again, x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals r squared. I like to start with the equation every time. My goal in the end is to have everything as a number except for the x and the y at the end, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and replace h and k. So instead of, do you guys need me to write two negatives, or can I just jump to the x plus 3? So hopefully by now you get it's x plus 3 squared, and it's y minus 6 squared equals r squared. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. So from here, if I know the center's at negative 3, 6, and I know it goes through 0, 6, I could graph the thing, and I could count, right? I could count from the center, either a vertical or horizontal line, and find the radius. The problem with that is sometimes it's not going to be pretty like that. It might be 0, comma, I don't know, square root of 2 or something like that, right? So you are welcome to graph it if it's easy and it works for you and you can count and find your radius on your own, but I'm going to show you the algebraic way to do it so we know for sure that we got it right, because the algebraic method works every single time. Geometric, you can't always eyeball some numbers, okay? So give this a letter, x, y. So can't I replace x and y with 0 and 6, and I'll be left with r squared, which is what I want anyway? Right? Substitution. So instead of x, I'm going to put a 0. Instead of y, I'm going to put a 6. And go from there. Okay? So what is 0 plus 3? 3. What's 3 squared? Okay? What's 6 plus, or excuse me, 6 minus 6? 0 squared. 0. So 9 is equal to r squared. Do you guys get that? Okay. I know how tempted you're going to be to go ahead and say r is what? 3. That's true. But do I need r or do I need r squared? R squared. So couldn't I just stop here? Do you see what I'm saying? So if that really bothers you not to finish the problem, you can say technically r is plus or minus 3, but negative 3 doesn't make sense. So you could say 3, but when we go back up to this part and we replace r squared, you can either say 3 squared is 9, or you could have stopped here because we literally needed r squared and we said it was 9. Do you see what I'm saying? So you can save yourself a step if you want to, but if that's going to freak you out, don't do it. Okay? So we get x plus 3 quantity squared plus y minus 6 quantity squared equals 9, because 3 squared is 9 if you want to think of it that way. To graph a circle. Okay. It's not used, I don't think it's used to find anything, it's used to graph a circle. Okay? Just like when you have the equation of a line, it's used to graph a line. Right? Okay, on this one, number 25, you don't have that. You guys don't have it in standard form yet. So that is a standard that is not technically a geometry standard. So that's a factor by completing the square, if I remember right. So it's algebra 1 concept that you definitely did, and it's an algebra 2 concept that you will do or you are doing now if you're doubling up. So I don't have to teach you that standard, therefore I'm not going to, because it's kind of tricky. So what you guys are going to do is you could put one line through yours or just go underneath it and write this. This is all I would ever ask you. I wouldn't ask you to put it in standard form on your own because as of this year, it's not a geometry standard. Okay? So, write that down. You can't do it if you don't. You don't know how, probably. While you're writing that down, it says, for each circle with the given equation, state the coordinates of the center and the measure of the radius. Then graph the thing. So you need to have the quantity x plus 4 squared plus the quantity y minus 2 squared equals 16. If it's the way it was written in your notes, you wouldn't probably know how to put it in this form. Okay? All right, so again, I'm going to write the equation. It's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, right? So my center is h comma k. So if that's 4, I need what? Negative 4. If that's 2, negative 2, I need 2. Do the opposite. Remember what we were talking about before? Take the opposite, right? If this is 16, then what's r? Nope, 4, right? Square root both sides. If you don't get that, actually write it down. Those are the same, right? Square root both sides, you get plus or minus 4. Negative 4 doesn't make sense, so just positive 4. Are we okay? So the center of my circle is at negative 4, 2, and my radius is 4. The way that I ask you to graph these, we're just going to sketch it. We're going to do the best we can. We're not going to get a compass out or anything like that. So I'm going to go to negative 4, 2 and put an ordered pair there. Okay? From the center, if you go up 4, right 4, down 4, and left 4 and connect those dots, that'll make a decent circle. Okay? So I go up 4 from the center. I go right 4 from the center. Down 4 from the center. And left 4 from the center. And if you connect those dots, knowing that you're making a circle-ish, it looks okay usually. Yours should be a little better than mine, but... No, well, it's hard to do when you can't see it. Just do the best you can. Make sure it looks kind of like a circle. Everybody okay? Pretty easy concept, right? Okay. Last question. Find the point or points, excuse me, of intersection, if any, between each circle and line. So, this is the equation of a circle. X squared and y squared, whenever they have the same coefficients on them, it's a circle if it's x squared and y squared, okay? And then this is a line, like back in Algebra 1 line, right? So before I'm even going to try the problem, let me show you what the possibilities are, okay? If I have a circle and a line, how many points of intersection does this picture have? 0, right? If I have a circle and a line, how many points of intersection does this one have? 1. You got a tangent line, right? If I have a circle and a line, 2. So my options are 0, 1, or 2. I have no idea which one it's going to be, which is why I'm going to sketch a quick graph of this thing. You don't have to sketch a graph to get this answer right. However, if you do, not only do you have an idea of how many answers you should have, but you have an idea of what your answer should look like. Does that make sense? Like 2, 4 or something. And then if I get 215, I'm pretty sure I screwed up somewhere. Okay, so again, you don't have to graph it, but we're going to anyway. So I'm going to sketch a really quick graph. It's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. I'm just trying to see if it's 0, 1, or 2 answers. So with this, where's my center? There's always a center. Let's go back. Let's figure it out. Looks like that, right? Which means there's a 0. They just didn't show it. Does that make sense? So where's my center? 0, 0. Very good. My radius is the square root of 5. Since I'm graphing it, I kind of need to know what that is as a decimal. So go ahead and take the square root of 5. And give me the nearest tenth would be fine. Like 2.2. Okay. So I'm going to sketch a graph. This is not going to be perfect because I don't know where 2.2 whatever is. I'm just going to do the best I can. So center's at 0, 0. I'm going to go up 2 and a little bit more. I'm going to go right 2 and a little bit more, down 2 and a little bit more, left 2 and a little bit more. I'm going to graph that circle the best I can, and just keep in mind it's a sketch. It's not perfect. Okay? Now I'm going to graph this line, y equals mx plus b. Bless you. Y equals mx plus v. What's my slope? 1/2. What's my y-intercept? 0, right? Algebra 1, okay? So if I start at 0 and I go up 1, right 2, and I go down 1, left 2-ish, should look something like this. So how many answers am I going to end up with? 2, okay? I know I'm going to get x comma y, x comma y. I like to do this so I have a goal and I know that I'm getting to 2 ordered pairs in the end. I can look at that and kind of guess where they're crossing, but that's not a good way to do it because remember that wasn't really 2.2 and I'm kind of sketching it. So you don't want to look at that and write the answer down, but you do want to look at that and make sure your answer makes sense. Okay? So if you go back here, this is kind of an Algebra 1 concept, okay? This is where you guys would have done like substitution or elimination or something like that. So do you guys see that y is alone, right? So up here, instead of a y, what can I substitute? 1/2 x. Y and 1/2 x are the same in this problem. Does everybody understand that? So I'm going to say x squared plus y squared is 5. And you guys just told me y was 1/2 x. Everybody okay? Okay, so I saw x squared. What's 1 squared? 1. What's 2 squared? 4. So that's 1/4 x squared. You guys okay? 1/2 squared is 1/4. And then x squared is x squared, right? So what's 1? Uh-huh. It's not. The 1/2 squared is 1/4. And when you take a power to a power, 1 times 2 is 2. So when we did the math, the x to the 1 became x to the 2. The square isn't actually still there. It became something else. Did that make sense to you? I didn't just copy it down. Let me show you this instead. If I did this, this is x to the 6. You multiply when you do a power to a power. This is a 1, and 1 times 2 is 2. This 2 is not that one. It's 1 times 2 is the answer to that. Is that okay? Okay. So 1 plus a fourth is 1 1/4, right? 1 1/4 x squared, or 5/4 if you prefer, right? What's in the way of x squared being alone? 1 1/4. What's it doing to the x squared? Multiplying, what do? Divide. So take probably your calculator, I guess. Take 5 divided by 1 1/4, or 5 divided by 5/4, or keep it, change it, flip it, or whatever math gets you the answer. You should get 4. So x squared equals 4. Now what do I do to both sides? Square root. When you square root both sides of an equation, what are you supposed to do? Plus or minus, right? In geometry, a lot of times, I don't want to say we skip that part, we don't need that part. Here we do, right? Yesterday, we didn't need the negative because we couldn't have a negative piece of a circle. Does that make sense? Today, this x is an ordered pair. Can I have a -2 ordered pair? Sure, right? That's fine. So I need the +2 and the -2. So one of the x's is 2 and the other one's -2. That's why, in my opinion, it's so helpful to have that picture in the first place, so I know I should have 2 answers. If not, a lot of people forget this plus or minus and they just say 2, where they would only get one of the answers and they literally got half the question wrong because they forgot plus or minus. Does that make sense? Okay, so I have an x, I need a y. What do? Plug it in, right? That looks pretty easy, doesn't it? If I plug x in here, isn't y pretty easy to find? Okay, so this says y equals 1/2 x, I said is 2 the first time. What's 1/2 times 2? 1. The second time I said x is -2. What's 1/2 times -2? -1. So my ordered pairs are 2, 1 and -2, -1. I'm going to look at my graph to see if that's feasible, to see if that makes sense. If you look here, 2, 1, that looks probably right. And -2, -1, it's probably right, right? If I got 2, 15, I'd be like, okay, I think I screwed up somewhere. Does that make sense? Did I lose anybody anywhere? Okay. On your homework, there's going to be 2 questions that are like number 25 where you don't have it in the proper form, so you're not going to know what to do. So 24 and 26, you need to use these equations. So you can write it on your notes or you can write it on your homework, whatever you want. But if you don't write this down, you're not going to be able to do it. Okay? 24 and 26, write these down.